Ash drifts through the ruined air like black snow. The stones of Osgiliath sweat cold, and every breath tastes of river mist and burnt pitch. Men scream in the dark between broken arches, not knowing if the next footfall is friend or orc. A horn calls once, choked, and dies. Then the water itself seems to whisper as shapes move where no shapes should be, and a carved face stares up from the mud, wet with blood. If you want more Middle-earth told like this, leave a like and join the channel with a subscription. It helps these stories find their people. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what corner of the world feels closest to Gondor tonight. The steward's garrison calls it another night of retreat, another measured step back from a city that once crowned the Anduin like a jewel. The veterans have learned the rhythm of Mordor's pressure. Push, pause, push again. They think they know what comes next. They do not see the small figures on the riverbank until the first orc falls without a cry, a dart in its throat and a hand over its mouth. They do not hear the feet in the mud that leave no splash. They only feel for the first time in many months that someone else is watching the watchers. Faramir, captain of Gondor, stands under a fractured statue of an ancient king whose face is gone. His men are tired, grey with soot, their mails stiff with dried river water. The air smells of algae and old death. He listens to the distant grind of enemy engines being dragged along the east bank, and the nearer sound of his own soldiers breathing like men trying to swallow stones. A shape steps into the shadow beside him, as if the shadow has decided to stand. Short, broad, a tangle of beard and leaf-brown hair, a face like a weathered root, eyes bright and unreadable. The creature holds no steel. It carries a heavy club of dark wood, polished by use. Damrod, ranger of Ithilien, snaps up his bow. Faramir lifts a hand. He has learned on the long roads of Ithilien that a raised hand can save a life more surely than any blade. The stranger's voice comes out low, as if spoken from inside the earth. Big men fight in Stonewater Place. Big men bleed much. Woes watch. Woes, Damrod whispers, half a curse, half a wonder. Old stories told by fires. Wild men who do not bow to kings, who melt into forest and hill. Harmless, some said. Others said they were worse than orcs. Gondor, in its long pride, I had done what it often did with those it did not understand. It forgot them. Faramir's eyes do not leave the stranger. Why show yourself? The Woses' gaze flicks to the river, then to the east where the darkness thickens toward the Morgul Vale. Black One, grow. Smoke, eat trees. Woos do not like. He touches the broken statue's base, where moss clings. Stone remember? Men forget. Faramir feels a small, cold question settle in his mind, the kind that stays. If these hidden folk are here now in the worst place, at the worst hour, what has driven them out of their secrecy? And if they fight, will Gondor accept them, or use them, or kill them out of fear? He gestures toward the ruined causeway. Can you lead us through this night? The Wose bears teeth that are not a smile. Wose can lead. Wose can kill. But big men must listen. In another age, some proud captain would have demanded oaths, names, banners. Faramir only nods. Then lead. The night that follows is the first turning of the wheel. The orcs come as they always do, in thick knots, pushing ladders and dragging hooks, howling to drown their own dread. They expect Gondor's archers on the broken bridges, Gondor's retreat into the western half, Gondor's measured loss. They do not expect the riverbank itself to rise against them. From holes in the rubble, blowpipes whisper. Darts strike throats, eyes soft places under helm rims. Orcs clutch at themselves, confused at the sudden weakness, at limbs that do not obey. In the mud, small hands seize ankles and pull, and the river takes the struggling bodies without a splash, as if it has been fed before. Gondorian soldiers stare, then fight harder because the fear in them has found a place to go. A young man named Calamir, who has never seen Minas Tirith and only knows it by the way older men say its name, feels his hands stop shaking. He smells the sharp bitterness of unknown herbs on the darts that litter the ground. He hears, over the clamour, a deep, guttural chant that is not in any tongue of men he knows. It makes the hairs on his neck rise, and yet it makes him think of hearthfire and hidden caves. On the east bank, a Mordor captain with a whip, scarred and careful, sees his line buckle in a way it should not. He turns his head, searching for siege towers, for some obvious failure. His eyes catch, for a heartbeat, the gleam of a carved stone face set on a fallen pillar, its features crude and fierce. For an instant, he feels watched not by the men of Gondor, but by the land itself. He strikes a slave for looking at him and orders the attack to press harder. He does not know that this night will be spoken of later in the Dark Tower with a new, sharp word, Drúedain. The battle does not end in victory, not in the way songs like. Osgiliath is still too broken, the enemy too many, the weight of Mordor too heavy. But the retreat is not a rout. It is a withdrawal with teeth. Faramir's men cross to the western ruins with fewer dead than any night in memory, and when dawn bleeds pale over the Anduin, orc corpses float like dark leaves, their faces turned upward as if surprised by the sky. Faramir finds the woes again beneath an arch where ivy has dared to grow. How many are you? The woes looks past him, as if counting things too far away for men to see. More than you think. Less than you need. What do you want? The Woses' brow furrows, and for a moment he looks older than stone. Woes want dark gone. Woes want trees not burn. Woes want big men not come with axes after. His eyes fix on Faramir's. Big men, promise? It is a simple question, and it feels like a blade. Faramir answers as a captain, and also as a man who has walked among living green things and felt peace. I will speak for you to the steward. I will ask for your lands to be left to you. I cannot promise what I do not rule. The woos snort softly, as if amused at the honesty. Good. Woos like straight talk. He steps closer and his voice drops. Woos see things. Black Rider fly over water last night. Black Rider smell new smell. He will come again. Faramir looks up instinctively at the brightening sky, and dread moves under his ribs. The Nazgul, the terror that breaks armies. If the Drúedain have shown their hand, Sauron will not ignore them. And if the Black Riders learn their paths, who will suffer first? The Drúedain in their forest, or the men who shelter behind stone? Far away, on a high seat in Minas Tirith, Denethor's son of Ecthelion sits with hands clenched on the arms of his chair. The air in the tower hall tastes of ink and cold lamp oil. A messenger has come with news of Osgiliath. Not good news, but not as bad as he expects. Fewer dead, enemy delayed. Strange whispers of wild men in the ruins. Denethor's mouth tightens, not with relief, but with suspicion. Gondor has always had a talent for making enemies out of those it does not understand. He thinks of the old tales, squat hunters in the woods, half tamed, half wild. Useful, perhaps, like hounds. Dangerous, certainly, if they are allowed to believe themselves equal. He turns his gaze toward the covered stone that sits in his private chamber behind locked doors, and for a moment he thinks of lifting the cloth. He does not yet. He is not ready to see what the seeing stone will show him tonight. That hesitation, small as a breath, will matter. In the White City, ordinary life continues because it must. In a narrow street on the 6th Circle, a woman named Ivrin kneads bread, while the ground trembles faintly with distant siege preparations. Flower dust hangs in the air like soft snow. Her son watches the door, listening for horns. She tells him to watch the bread instead. She has learned that fear makes children grow old too fast. When the news spreads that strange allies have fought at Osgiliath, the talk in the market shifts. Some laugh, calling it tavern nonsense. Some make the sign against evil. A few, who remember older stories, grow quiet. They say the Drúedain once helped the Edain long ago, when the world was younger and men were humbler. If those folk have come again, then the war has reached deeper than walls. Faramir brings the Woses and 3 others into Minas Tirith within days. Not through the main gate, where crowds would gather and fear would sharpen into stones, but by a lesser postern at dusk. The guards there recoil at first. One reaches for his sword. The Wose does not flinch. He only looks at the blade with faint contempt, as if steel is a child's toy. Faramir speaks sharply. They are under my protection. A veteran named Beregond, on duty at the gate, studies the newcomers. He has seen men from Lossarnach, fishermen from the Pelagir Keys, proud knights from Dol Amroth. These are different. They smell of earth after rain, of crushed leaves, of smoke from green wood. One of them carries a small carved figure on a cord, its face fierce and staring. Beregond feels an irrational urge to apologize to it. They are brought before Denethor. The steward's eyes move over them like a knife-testing cloth. So, the captain of Ithilien returns with curiosities. Faramir stands straight. Father, these are Drúedain. They have fought the enemy at Osgiliath. They know the crossings, the hidden ways. They can scout where men cannot. Denethor's gaze lingers on the leader, the one who speaks. And what do they demand in return? The Wose steps forward without being told. The guards bristle, but he does not look at them. He looks at Denethor as if Denethor is a tree that might be diseased. Big stone man sit high, the Wose says. Stone man fight dark. Wose fight dark too. Wose want promise. Big men not hunt Wose when dark gone. A murmur ripples through the hall. Some men snort, some stare. Denethor's voice is mild and therefore dangerous. You ask a steward of Gondor to bind the hands of Gondor for the sake of wild folk who hide in forests and make no tribute. Faramir's jaw tightens. He sees in the corner of his mind how this can go wrong. Pride meets pride and blood follows. The Wose tilts his head. Stone man want help, yes? Help costs something. Wose do not eat gold. Wose eat roots. Wose want only leave. Denethor's fingers tap the armrest. He thinks of the Palantir again. He thinks of how every ally has a price, and how Sauron buys in fear. He thinks of Rohan, unreliable and proud. He thinks of the Drúedain, and how little they matter in the great Game of Thrones. Then he thinks of Osgiliath, bleeding. He thinks of the long years of dwindling, and he feels, beneath all his suspicion, a bitter clarity. Gondor is outnumbered, outmatched, and nearly alone. He leans forward. You will have leave, so long as Gondor stands. You will have no axes in your forest from my command, but you will serve in this war. You will bring me knowledge, and you will spill the blood of my enemies." The Woses' eyes narrow, words twist, but woes hear, woes will fight. Faramir exhales slowly. A bargain has been made. It is not clean, it is not kind, it is necessary. That is the flavor of Gondor's choices now. Outside the walls, the war accelerates as if it has smelled the bargain. The Drúedain move through Ithilien like shadows given purpose. Where Faramir's rangers have always been skilled, now they become terrifying. Orc patrols vanish. Haradrim's scouts are found days later, faces down in ferns, with no sign of what killed them. The enemy begins to travel in larger groups, and that slows them, and that buys Gondor time. Time is a currency, and it is never free. In Minas Morgul, the Witch King feels the change like a thorn in the mind. His captains report losses that do not fit the pattern of men's warfare. He rides to the edge of the vale beneath a sky the color of bruised bone. He listens. There is a whisper in the trees that is not wind. There are eyes that do not fear him in the way men's eyes do. He does not know their names, but he knows their nature. Old, are stubborn, tied to the land. Such things can be broken. Such things can also infect courage. He makes a decision that will stain the coming weeks. He sends a flight of fell beasts south and west, not toward Minas Tirith, but toward the woods where the Drúedain dwell. He orders fire. In Drúedain forest, far from stone and banners, a child of the Drúedain wakes to the sound of leaves trembling when there is no wind. The forest smells suddenly of sour smoke. Over the treetops, a shadow passes, and the birds fall silent. The child runs to a carved stone face set at the edge of a path. The face's mouth is open, as if screaming forever. The child presses his small hand to the stone and feels it cold, colder than night. He does not understand war between kings. He understands this. Something is coming that wants to make the forest scream. The first flames take the underbrush before dawn. The Drúedain fight fire with wet earth, with green branches, with desperate hands. They are not many. Their strength has always been in hiding. Now, because they have chosen to be seen, the enemy sees them. Gan-buri-gan, their chief, stands on a rise, watching smoke coil through his trees. He feels anger, and beneath it, an older grief. He has watched forests shrink in the slow way of years. This is faster. This is a teeth-bared destruction. A runner comes from the west with news from Gondor. The enemy gathers in numbers beyond counting. Minas Tirith will be besieged. Help is demanded, promised, begged. Gan-buri-gan looks at the runner, then at the burning green. "Woes go fight Stonewall," he says softly, "and forest die behind. Some of his folk growl, some weep without tears. A few turn away, heading deeper into the woods with what they can carry. An old division, long dormant, opens like a wound. Those who will fight with men, and those who will vanish as they always have. Gan-buri-gan knows that if he leaves, the forest may die. If he stays, Gondor may die. And if Gondor dies, Mordor's fire will come for the forest anyway. He lifts his club. "Woes go," he says. "Woes kill black servants. Forest remember." It feels like an ending already. The hidden folk step into open war, and the cost begins at home. In Rohan, word of this reaches Theoden late, carried by a rider who has seen strange tracks in the wold and small carved stones beside the road like warnings. Eomer listens with a warrior's impatience. He has known the Drúedain only as rumour, and as the queer allies who guided his people through secret paths in some half-remembered tale. "They fight with Gondor now?" he asks. "Everywhere Gondor bleeds. the rider says. They are there. Theodan's eyes, old and newly awakened, narrow. Then they have chosen their side. And when this war is done, we must remember who bled with us. Remember, it sounds noble in a hall. It is harder in peacetime when land is measured and cut, and memory competes with hunger. On the road north of Minas Tirith, the Grey Company rides with Aragorn. They move under low clouds, the air heavy with storm. Aragorn's thoughts are split between the city ahead and the paths he must choose. In another telling, he would take the haunted road under the mountain without hesitation, driven by time and prophecy. Now, our messengers meet him with tidings that change the weight of his decision. Drúedain's scouts have struck at the Corsairs' forward camps. Harad's southern muster is delayed. Pelargir still holds barely because the river routes are being watched by eyes that do not sleep. Aragorn listens, and in his mind a question forms, sharp as a star. If the river can be held by living allies, is it right to call the dead? He rides on, silent, while the wind brings the smell of rain and distant smoke. In Minas Tirith, the siege begins with an almost polite inevitability. Drums roll across the Pelennor in a slow, patient thunder. The sky bruises and darkens, as if ashamed to look down. Refugees crowd the lower circles. The air is thick with sweat, horse dung, and fear that tastes metallic on the tongue. Beregond watches from the wall as the first enemy fires arc in. They are not ordinary arrows. They hiss and trail smoke. They land, and a sickly green flame blossoms, clinging to wood and cloth alike. Men shout. Water is thrown. Useless. Sand is poured. Still the fire eats. Near him, a Drúedain stands on the parapet, small against the vastness, unarmored. He holds a bundle of darts and a sling. He looks almost calm, but his nostrils flare as he smells the burning. "Can you fight like this?" Beregond asks without meaning to. He does not know why he speaks to this strange ally. Perhaps because the Drúedain does not flinch. The Drúedain's voice is rough. Woes fight where feet go. Stone high makes feet foolish. But woes see. Woes throw. He does. His sling snaps. On and a stone cracks against an orc helm below with a sound like a bell struck wrong. The orc falls backward and two others stumble over him. The Drúedain does not cheer. He only reloads. Below, in the streets, Ivrin's bread burns in her oven because she forgets it. She has wrapped her son in a cloak and is pushing him toward a shelter dug into the rock. The city smells now of smoke and panic. Above, the great bells toll, and each toll feels like a giant hand squeezing her heart. When the first great ram rolls into view, shaped like a wolf's head and black as a funeral, a shudder goes through the defenders. Men whisper a name, Grond. It comes like a memory from old nightmares. Denethor watches from the tower, his face carved from grief and pride. He has used the seeing stone now. He has seen ships with black sails on the Anduin. He has seen flame. He has seen a figure in a dark helm lifting a great weapon at the gate. He has seen too much, and what he has seen has been arranged for him like a trap. He turns away from the window and looks at Faramir, newly returned wounded from a doomed defense beyond the walls. Faramir lies pale as winter on a bed, his breath thin. Denethor's eyes, red-rimmed, flick toward the Drúedain, who crouch in the shadows of the chamber like animals unwelcome in a house. "What good are your wild friends now?" Denethor whispers, and the bitterness in it makes even the servants flinch. One Drúedain steps forward. It is Ganburigan himself, soot on his beard from his burning forest, eyes bright with a fury that has nowhere to go. He speaks slowly, as if forcing his words into the shape of men's language. Stone man, look in stone eye. Stone eye, lie. Denethor's head snaps up. You know of the Palantir. Gan points a thick finger toward the covered stone. Woos feel it. Bad thing. It show what Black One want you see. A hush. Even Gandalf, newly arrived and weary, stills at the edge of the room. Denethor's laugh is soft and terrible. And what does a forest creature know of Sauron's arts? Gan's gaze does not waver. Woes no smell of trap. Woes live by not stepping where hunter want. For a moment, Denethor wavers. It is not kindness that moves him. It is something colder, the recognition that a creature with nothing to gain by flattery might speak truth. Gandalf steps in, voice like iron wrapped in cloth. Lord Steward, you have been assailed in mind. Put away the stone. Trust not what it shows. Denethor's hands tremble. His pride fights his fear. His love for his son fights his despair. He looks at Faramir's still face and sees not hope, but the slow approach of loss. Outside, Grond strikes the gate. The impact shivers through the city bones. Dust falls from high arches like grey rain. Denethor's eyes close. When he opens them, there is decision there, and it is not the decision of surrender. He does not order the pyre. Instead, he orders something else, something that feels like another ending. Every able hand to the walls, every reserve brought up, every store counted. He orders the last companies of the city guard to form behind the gate with spears braced, and he permits the Drúedain to move where they will within the circles, to strike at breaches, to vanish and reappear like fever dreams. He walks down into the city among his people for the first time in many days. Men stare as if seeing a ghost. Denethor's presence steadies some and terrifies others. Leadership and doom can wear the same face. In the shadow of the gate, a young soldier named Calamir, now dragged from Osgiliath to this final wall, sees Denethor pass. He sees, beside him, Gan, and the contrast is absurd. The tall, proud steward in black and silver, and the squat wild chief in rags and soot. Yet they walk as allies, because the world has become desperate enough to accept strange pairings. Calamir thinks, in a sudden clarity, that if Gondor survives, it will not be by purity. It will be by any hand that can hold a line. The gate breaks on the third strike. Iron shrieks, stone cracks, the air explodes inward with splinters and dust. Orcs surge through the gap, howling, and behind them comes the Witch King, a darkness shaped like a man. The defenders recoil, not from steel, but from the cold that enters with him. Torches gutter, breath turns to mist. Gan steps forward and does something no man expects. He does not charge. He kneels. He presses his palm to the stone at the threshold and mutters in his own tongue, low and rhythmic. From the cracks in the broken gate stones, small carved faces appear, not newly made, but placed there earlier by hands no one noticed in the rush. Their mouths gape. Their eyes are wide. They seem, in the flickering torchlight, to drink the darkness. The Witch King pauses, just a fraction. It is enough. A volley of arrows, guided by Drúedain hands that have learned the angles of stone corridors quickly, slams into the orc front. A spear takes an orc in the throat. A man with a hammer crushes a skull. The defenders do not rout, they fight. The Witch King's laugh is soundless, but it freezes the marrow. He raises his mace, and the air thickens. Gandalf steps forward to meet him, and time feels poised on a knife edge. Then, from far off beyond the walls, a horn sounds, long and clear. Not the cracked horns of Gondor, but the wild music of the Mark. Rohan has come. The shift in the city is physical, like a lung finally filling. Men weep without knowing they weep. Even Denethor's rigid face softens just a little, as if some iron band around his chest loosens. On the Pelennor, the Rohirrim ride through a dawn made red by smoke. The grass is trampled and slick with dew. Theoden's hair streams like white flame. Eomer's spear is steady. The smell of horse sweat and crushed green rises, mixing with blood and burnt pitch. They crash into the enemy flank. And for a moment, the world is only speed and impact, and the old joy of battle. But this is not the battle they expected either. Alongside the horsemen, moving in the broken ditches and low hills, Drúedain strike like wolves. They do not ride, they run. They cut hamstrings of Mumakil with obsidian-sharp knives, then vanish under the beasts' bellies as they collapse, crushing friend and foe alike. They slip into the chaos behind enemy lines and sever tether ropes, sending panicked horses stamping through Mordor's own ranks. A Rohirrim rider sees one of them emerge from smoke, eyes shining, and for an instant he thinks he sees an ancient spirit of the land itself, angry and awake. He would have called it uncanny yesterday. Today he only nods and rides on. In the city, Gandalf and the Witch King face each other at the broken gate, and the air tastes of lightning. The Witch King lifts his mace. Before he can strike, a black dart whistles from somewhere high in the shadowed arch above. It strikes the fell beast's eye, not with force enough to kill, but enough to make it scream and recoil. The Witch King turns his unseen gaze upward. The Drúedain on the beam meets that gaze without blinking. He is trembling. He is terrified. He does not move. The Witch King's attention is drawn, and in war, attention is everything. Gandalf's staff flashes, white fire cutting through the choking darkness. The Witch King recoils a half step, not defeated, not yet, but checked. Outside, the battle roars. Inside, the gate holds a little longer. It feels again like an ending that might save them. It is not. On the Pelennor, the Witch King rides out into the open, drawn by a deeper hunger. Theoden falls beneath him, as he did in the true telling, crushed by the weight of doom and beast. The king's breath leaves in a thin, surprised sound. His eyes go wide, then soften, as if seeing green fields far away. Éowyn stands over him, helmet cast aside, hair loose like a banner. "I will kill you if you touch him," she says, voice raw. The Witch King laughs. "Hinder me? Thou fool, no living man may hinder me." In the smoke nearby, a Drúedain crouches, watching. He does not understand the words fully, but he understands the shape of arrogance. Merry Brandybuck, small as a child beside the giants, drives his blade into the sinew behind the wraith's knee, as in the true history. The Witch King falters. Éowyn strikes. The cry that comes out of the darkness is not of a man. It is of something ancient being unmade. The Drúedain, watching, makes a sound like a grunt of approval. He does not cheer. He simply turns and runs back into the battle, because there is always another enemy. If the Witch King's fall is a victory, it is also a lure. The enemy's will does not break, it tightens. Down on the Anduin at Pelagir, the river smells of salt and tar. The docks are crowded with refugees and soldiers from the southern fiefs. They have heard rumors of black-sailed ships, of corsairs with knives between their teeth, of Haradrim with painted faces. In the canonical world, hope arrives like a ghost army, and men kneel because there is nothing else to do. In this altered world, the river becomes a second battlefield before the first has ended. Drúedain have been sent south, not as an afterthought, but as a constant thread in Gondor's defense. They have haunted the reeds and mudflats for days, watching the river's bends, listening to the slap of oars in the dark. They have placed carved stones along hidden paths like silent sentries. A fisherman named Han, who has never held a sword, stands on the dock with a spear he does not know how to use. The wood is slick in his sweating hands. He hears the first creak of ships before he sees them. The black sails rise like night itself, blotting out the last light. Panic begins. Then a strange calm moves through the reeds. Little shapes slip into the water, silent, carrying gourds of oil and bundles of dry rushes. They climb the hulls of the leading corsair ships like spiders, unheard over the river's own noise. They smear oil, they tuck rushes, and they drop sparks. Flame blossoms suddenly along the black sails, bright and hungry. Men shout in a foreign tongue. Oars clash. A ship lurches, colliding with another, and fire leaps. Han stares as the river becomes a ribbon of burning black cloth and screaming men. The heat hits his face. His eyes water. For a moment, he cannot breathe. A Drúedain surfaces near the dock, water streaming from his beard. He looks at Han and barks a command in broken Westron. Throw. Han throws his spear without thinking. It strikes a corsair who has leapt onto the dock, and the man falls into the water with a splash and a curse. Han feels sick. Then he feels alive. Then he feels ashamed that he feels alive. He will remember that shame long after the war, when people ask him to tell the story like it is clean. The corsair assault breaks, not destroyed, but delayed and mauled. Pelagia holds long enough for reinforcements from Lebanon to arrive. The river remains contested, but it is not lost. Aragorn, riding hard from the paths he does take after all, arrives not with a host of dead sweeping everything before them, but with living men and the hard-earned breathing room bought by hidden allies. He does not carry the terror of the dead into the hearts of Gondor's own people. That matters later, when peace tries to settle. Yet, because he arrives with fewer miracles, more men die to earn what the dead would have taken without cost. The price shifts, it does not vanish. Back on the Pelennor, the battle turns in a grim seesaw. The Rohirrim are valiant, but they are surrounded. Gondor's sorties break out from the city, helped by Drúedain slipping through sally ports at night and cutting siege ropes. And yet, Mordor's weight continues to press. In the chaos, a betrayal blooms small and vicious. A lord of Gondor, proud and frightened, named Morwenlas of a minor house, sees the Drúedain moving within the city's circles, slipping through alleys, appearing behind enemy climbers. He does not see allies. He sees spies. He whispers to his men that these wild creatures will slit throats in the dark. He claims they are servants of the enemy, sent to weaken Gondor from within. Fear loves a believable lie. One night, he orders a postern gate barred that should have been left open for Drúedain returning from a raid. 3 of them arrive, pursued by orcs, and find the door shut. They pound once, twice. No answer. Orc arrows hiss. One Drúedain is pinned to the wall, a sudden wet sound, his breath leaving in a grunt. Another grabs the fallen one and tries to drag him. The third turns and fights with a club, cracking skulls in the narrow lane. He kills 2 orcs, then a third. A fourth drives a blade into his side. Above, Morwen Lass watches from a window slit, face pale. He tells himself he is protecting Gondor. By dawn, the Drúedain in the lane are dead, and the orcs have been killed too. The alley stinks of blood and smoke. Gan finds them by the carved stone face they had placed there earlier. The face looks up at the sky, mouth open. He does not howl. He does not weep. He only sits in the ash and holds one dead hand in his own, as if waiting for it to warm. When Faramir hears of it, weakness and fever still in him, he forces himself upright. Rage makes his vision sharpen. He confronts Morwen Lass before witnesses, voice quiet and lethal. "You murdered allies." Morwen Lass insists. "I did what I must. They are not men." Faramir's reply is a rasp. Then perhaps Gondor is not worthy of help. Denethor hears of this too. For a moment, his face hardens into something like the old king's. He orders Morwen Lass stripped of command and sent to the front line, where the enemy does not care what blood runs in a man's veins. Morwen Lass dies that day, crushed under the feet of a panicked Mumak. His last thought is not regret. It is confusion, the bewilderment of a man who believed fear was wisdom. Gan hears of Morwen Lass' death and does not smile. Vengeance is a thin meal. It does not bring back those lost, and it does not heal the deeper wound. Even among allies, the Drúedain will always be one suspicion away from slaughter. The Pelennor is won, finally, in a messy convergence of courage, timing and exhaustion. Aragorn arrives with reinforcements, the standard of Elendil rising like a remembered promise. The enemy falters, then breaks. Orcs flee. Haradrim die where they stand. The field becomes a vast, stinking carpet of ruin. Relief moves through Minas Tirith like warm water after long cold. Men fall to their knees in mud and laugh, or sob, or stare blankly at their hands, as if seeing them for the first time. In the houses of healing, the air is thick with crushed athelas and sweat and blood. Ioreth chatters because she cannot bear silence. Faramir lies pale but living. Éowyn breathes again. Merry coughs, eyes bright with fever. The wounded fill every space. Drúedain lie among them, their injuries treated by men who still do not know whether to look them in the eye. Aragorn walks through the rows, hands steady, voice calm. He does what a king does in the most ancient sense. He restores. Where his hands touch, men breathe easier. He stops beside Gan, who sits apart, refusing beds, refusing walls, as if stone itself is a cage. Gan shoulder is wrapped in linen. Blood has soaked through anyway. His eyes are fixed on nothing. Aragorn speaks softly. "Your people have bled for Gondor in every fight. I will not forget." Gan looks up. "Big King, talk like wind. Wind, go away." Aragorn does not flinch at the distrust. "Then I will speak with deeds. When the shadow is gone, your forest will be yours. No man under my rule will hunt you." Gan gaze searches Aragorn's face as if looking for cracks. "And men not under your rule." Aragorn's pause is brief, but it is honest. "I cannot rule every heart, but I can set a law and I can enforce it. And will that be enough?" Gan voice is low. "Enough for now, not enough forever." There is the shape of the final sorrow in that. It is a promise made against the slow erosion of time. The captains gather, and the question that always follows relief arrives. What next? Sauron is wounded, not dead. Mordor still stands. The ring is still unmade. Every breath of peace is borrowed. Gandalf argues that the host must march to the Black Gate to draw the eye away from whatever hope remains. Aragorn agrees. Imrahil agrees. Eomer agrees grimly, because the debt of alliance demands it. Denethor, thinner now, face hollowed by sleeplessness, surprises them all by insisting on sending men. He does not ride himself. He is too old, too bound to the city, and too proud to admit he fears leaving it. But he sends companies under captains he trusts. And he sends Drúedain too, because he has learned bitterly that eyes in the dark save lives. This march feels like another ending, because it is a choice to walk away from safety into the teeth of the enemy. Many who leave Minas Tirith do so, believing they will not return. As the host moves north toward the Morannon, the land grows harsher, the air dries, the grass thins, the smell of ash becomes constant, clinging to cloaks and hair. The horizon is jagged with broken hills like rotten teeth. Among the marching men is Calimere, now promoted because the men above him are dead. He has a blister on his heel that has split, and every step is pain. He thinks of the bread smell in the city he has never tasted, of the river mist at Osgiliath, of the Drúedain's silent movements in the night. One evening, he shares a meager meal with a Drúedain scout who speaks a little Westron. The Drúedain eats roots and dried meat, chewing slowly. Calimere cannot stop staring at the carved stone face hanging from the Drúedain's neck. "What is it?" Calimere finally asks. The Drúedain touches it. Watcher, a charm, not charm. The Drúedain's eyes flick toward Mordor's black line. Watcher see fear. Watcher remind woes. Fear not only in you, fear in enemy too. Calimere considers that. He has always thought of fear as a private shame. The idea that the enemy fears even a little is strangely strengthening. In the Emin Muil and beyond, Frodo and Sam crawl toward doom, unseen by armies. In this altered world, their path is not changed in geography, but the air around them feels different. Sauron's attention is pulled again and again to unexpected places, to fires on the river, to reports of silent killers in his rear, to carved stones found near slaughtered patrols with staring faces that seem to mock him. Each time his eye shifts, it eases by a fraction the pressure on two small hobbits. They still suffer, they still bleed. Gollum still leads them with hunger in his eyes. But the shadow pressing on Frodo's mind has moments, brief and precious, when it loosens. Sam does not know why. He only knows that sometimes he can breathe without choking on despair. He does not ask for reasons. He saves his strength for the next step. At the Black Gate, the host of the West stands before a wall of iron and malice. The air is so foul that men gag. The ground is cracked, as if the earth itself has tried to flee. The Morannon looms like a mouth that has eaten too much. Aragorn rides forward under the banner, and his voice carries across the dead plain. He calls Sauron out. He demands parley. He offers no terms that matter. He is buying time, and he knows it, and so do the wise. From the gate comes the mouth of Sauron, foul and smug, bearing tokens meant to break hope. In the true telling, he displays Frodo's mithril and Sam's sword, and the world almost ends in despair. Here, when he holds up the tokens, something else happens. A Drúedain, hidden among the rocks of the host's flank, sees the mouth's lips move, and something in his old instincts screams trap. He slips away without being seen, running low and fast across broken ground toward a cluster of boulders where other Drúedain wait. Gunbrey Gun, older now in his eyes, listens as the scout speaks in quick bursts. Then he does something that seems madness. He orders his folk to move not toward the gate, but toward the slag heaps to the side, where foul water trickles in narrow channels. They creep through stench, through ash, through slime that clings to skin. One slips and nearly cries out. Another catches him. They press on. Aragorn and Gandalf face the mouth, and the mouth smiles wider, savouring despair. "Here is the halfling's coat of mail," he says, voice like oil. "Here is his sword. Here is his cloak. Each word is a knife. For a heartbeat, some men sway." Calamir feels the world tilt. He has never met the halflings, but he has heard whispers of them. The ridiculous hope of tiny folk carrying a great burden. If they are dead, then this march is a pointless suicide. Then, from far to the side, a sudden flare of flame rises in Mordor's own waste channel. A foul sluice gate, used to drain slag and water, erupts as if something has broken it from beneath. Smoke billows, thick and white, not the usual black. The mouth of Sauron's eyes flicks sideways, annoyed. Gandalf's gaze sharpens. He understands at once. A distraction, a fracture in the enemy's careful theatre. Aragorn seizes the moment. He cuts the parley short, his voice ringing. "We will not be mocked. Begone." The mouth snarls, but the spell of his display has been broken. Doubt flickers, not in the host, but in the enemy's messenger. For an instant, his confidence wavers. He withdraws, and the gate begins to move. The slag channel flare does not open the black gate. It does not win the battle. It does something smaller and more vital. It keeps hope from snapping in the instant it is most brittle. It buys a sliver of steadiness in the hearts of men who must stand against impossible odds. The gate opens. Mordor pours out. The battle at the Morannon is slaughter. No story can make it clean. Men die with names on their lips. Horses scream. Orcs swarm. The sky is a lid of smoke. The sun is a sick coin behind ash. Drúedain fight in the broken ground where their feet are sure. They dart between legs, hamstringing, stabbing, clubbing. They drag wounded men into hollows. They throw stones until their arms shake. They do not flee even when the press becomes overwhelming, because they have burned their own bridges behind them. If Mordor wins, there is no forest deep enough to hide forever. Calamir fights beside one, back to back, in a moment that feels unreal. The Drúedain grunts a word that might be encouragement. Calamir answers with a laugh that is half sob. Then a troll comes through the smoke, huge and stupid and deadly, swinging a great hammer. It smashes a man flat. It swings again. The Drúedain leaps, striking at its knee. The troll roars and backhands him without looking. The small body sails, hits the ground, does not rise. Calamir screams, not in heroic rage, but in raw grief for a creature he barely knew and somehow trusted. He charges the troll, and he would die. A spear takes the troll in the throat from the side. Eomer's men, or Imrahil's, it does not matter. The troll falls, shaking the ground. Calamir stumbles, panting, staring at the Drúedain's still form. He kneels and sees the carved watcher face on the cord, cracked now. The Drúedain's eyes are open, are staring at the dark sky. Calamir takes the cord with trembling fingers and ties it around his own wrist. He does not know why. He only knows he cannot leave it in the ash. On the slopes of Orodruin, far away, Frodo stands at the crack of doom and fails, as he always did. He claims the ring. The world holds its breath. In Barad-dûr, Sauron feels the claim like a knife in his own hand. His attention snaps away from the Black Gate, away from men and Drúedain and battle, and turns inward, racing toward the mountain. At the Morannon, the enemy's pressure shifts. Orcs falter, confused, as if their leash has been jerked. For a heartbeat, the host of the West breathes. And then Gollum bites, falls, and the ring is taken by fire. The world shudders as if a great weight has been lifted off its spine. The towers of Mordor tremble. The Black Gate groans. Men look up, blinking ash from their eyes, and see something impossible. The darkness in the sky thinning, as if smoke has been pierced by wind. Relief comes first, a wave so strong it nearly knocks men to their knees. Some laugh, some fall, some stare at their hands again as if unsure they exist. The sound of battle changes pitch, losing its relentless hunger. Then disquiet follows, creeping in behind the relief like a cold draft under a door. Because the enemy does not die politely. The ground cracks. Orcs, suddenly freed from terrors, lash, panic. Some flee. Some throw down weapons and wail. Trolls stumble as if drunk. The very air seems to tear as Barad-dûr collapses in the far distance, a sound like mountains breaking. At the Black Gate, stone begins to fall. Great blocks crash down, crushing men and orcs alike. And dust erupts in choking clouds. Aragorn shouts orders that are swallowed by thunder. Drúedain, quick and low, pull men out of the way. One is crushed under a falling slab while pushing a wounded Gondorian clear. His death is instantaneous, unremarked by history, but seen by a dozen men who will never forget the weight of that sacrifice. Gan-buri-gan stands amid the chaos, looking toward the south where his forest lies. He feels the shadow lift from the land like a hand released. He should feel triumph. Instead, he feels exhaustion so deep it is almost peace, and under it, a sorrow that has been waiting. When the host staggers away from the collapsing gate and the ash begins to settle, the world looks newly washed and unbearably wounded. The wind shifts, and for the first time in many days, it carries the faint, clean scent of distant rain. The march home is quieter. Men speak of victory, of kingship, of the ending of the Third Age. They speak of rebuilding walls, of planting fields, of marriages and songs. They speak because speech fills the hollow where fear used to live. But the Drúedain speak less, and when they do, their words are about trees and smoke and burned places. In Minas Tirith, Aragorn is crowned. The city shines with banners. The streets smell of fresh-cut greenery and spiced wine. People cheer until their voices crack. Eivrin brings her son to see the king pass. The boy's eyes are huge. He clutches a small loaf of bread, warm in his hands, and thinks the world has become safe. Beregond, now honored, stands with his son at his side. He watches the Drúedain on the edge of the crowd, half in shadow, as if they cannot quite enter the celebration. Some citizens stare at them as curiosities. A few make the sign against evil again, quietly, because old fear is stubborn. Aragorn sees them too. He breaks from his path for a moment and walks to Gan-buri-gan. The crowd hushes, confused. Aragorn speaks so those near can hear. Here stand the Drúedain, who fought with Gondor in every battle of this war. Let none in my realm harm them. Let their woods be theirs, and let their paths be honored. Some cheer, uncertain why. Some remain silent. A law spoken in joy is still only words until tested by hunger and time. Denethor does not live to see much of the peace. He survives the siege. He survives the despair that in another world would have consumed him, but the cost is etched into him. He grows quieter. One night, he goes alone to the chamber of the Seeing Stone and looks at it without touching it. He does not cover it again. In the morning, He is found sitting in his chair, eyes closed, hands relaxed, as if he has finally put down a heavy burden. The city mourns him with complicated grief because he was harsh and he held the line when it mattered. Faramir becomes steward in truth under the king, and he remembers the bargain made in ash and blood. He rides to Drúedain forest with a small escort and no banners. He brings tools, seed, and men who know how to mend what can be mended. What he finds there is not the deep green refuge of old tales. He finds blackened clearings, skeleton trees, and silence. He smells char and wet earth. New shoots push up stubbornly from the ash, but the forest is scarred. Gan meets him among the burned trunks. He looks smaller here, not because he has shrunk, but because the trees that made him seem part of something vast are gone. Faramir dismounts and bows his head. I did not come to take. I came to keep faith. Gan studies him, then gestures to the land. Keep, he repeats, as if tasting the word. Men keep until they want more. Faramir's voice is tired. Then I will want less. They walk together through the ash. Faramir's boots crunch on charcoal. Ganburigan's feet are silent even here. They speak of boundaries, of paths that men must not cut, of penalties for those who do. They speak of watchers, and Faramir asks at last what he has wondered since Osgiliath. Why the carved faces, he says. It is one of the few questions he allows himself, because questions have weight. Gan touches a stone face half buried in soot. Watcher hold memory, he says. When woes die, watcher remember. When men forget, watcher still look. Faramir feels a chill. Memory carved into stone because living minds are unreliable. How many wars have been fought because someone forgot a promise? In the Shire, far away, hobbits return to a land that has its own wounds, smaller in scale but sharp in pain. Sam plants and things grow. He does not know the Drúedain's name, but in his dreams sometimes he sees small, wild figures moving through smoke, and he wakes with tears on his face and cannot explain why. Years pass. The reunited kingdom strengthens. Roads are repaired. Stone rises. Fields spread. Men multiply. And along the edges of Drúedain forest, axes begin to appear anyway, not by royal decree, but by desperation and greed. A farmer's son cuts a tree for a new roof. A merchant offers coin for rare wood. A hunter follows a stag too deep. One morning, a man is found at the forest's edge, alive but changed. His hair has turned white. His eyes are wide and empty. He cannot speak. Around his neck hangs a crude carved stone face, its mouth open as if laughing. Aragorn's law holds for a time. Guards are sent. Boundaries are marked. Some offenders are punished. Yet the pressure never fully stops, because peace breeds appetites, and memory fades faster than forests regrow. Gan grows older. His people grow fewer. Some leave, slipping away east or south into hills no map cares about. Some remain, stubborn as roots in poor soil. They still place watchers on the paths. They still fight when threatened. But now they fight the slow war against forgetting. On a grey evening, long after banners have frayed and songs have become children's rhymes, a traveller walks the edge of Drúedain forest and sees, half hidden in moss, an old carved face staring out. The traveller pauses, feeling an unease he cannot name. The air smells of rain and leaf mould, clean and ancient. Deep within the trees, something moves, small and silent, watching the watcher, watching the world that will always edge closer. And in the dim green hush, the stone face keeps its mouth open, as if it has been screaming for centuries and has only just begun to be heard.